city of 1,000 years, lost in 53 days. Not by enemies, but by allies, betrayed. Bled broken from within. The empire died. But its shadow still haunts us. Part 2. Bayezid is defeated at Ankara in 1402. The siege lifts, but the Byzantines misunderstand. They think it's a divine reprieve. In truth, it's merely a pause. For the next 50 years, Constantinople lingers on like a corpse that refuses to rot. Its emperors sell relics, crown Western kings for favors, and marry into foreign dynasties. They send their sons as hostages to the Ottoman court. They pray for another miracle. But the miracles are gone. If you were the late emperor, what would you do to save Constantinople from Ottoman siege and internal division? The once great empire, which had outlived Rome itself, is now cornered. There are no more armies, no more allies, no more time. The Ottomans, led now by a 21-year-old sultan with a vision, are coming again. And this time, they will not be lifting the siege. In 1451, the Byzantine Empire was little more than a ghost of its former glory, a once mighty titan reduced to a trembling city-state, surrounded by hostile lands. But that year, something changed. A storm began to gather, and at its heart was a 19-year-old sultan named Mehmed II, son of Murad II, returned to the throne of the Ottoman Empire with a singular obsession: the final destruction of Constantinople. He was no longer the insecure youth who had briefly reigned years earlier. Now he was driven, calculating, and deeply aware of what Constantinople symbolized, both to Christendom and to the Muslim world. Capturing it would not merely be a military victory, it would be a moment that echoed across civilizations. The Byzantines, clinging to ancient defenses and crumbling walls, underestimated him. Almost immediately after ascending the throne, Mehmed began laying plans that shocked both allies and enemies. He did not make idle threats. Instead, he began construction of a fortress on the European side of the Bosphorus Strait. Rumeli Hisari, also known as the Throat Cutter. It stood directly across from an older Ottoman fortress on the Asian side, effectively turning the Bosphorus into an Ottoman-controlled choke point. No ship could pass between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean without the Sultan's blessing. To the Byzantines, this was no mere construction project. It was a declaration of intent. Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos, the last ruler of the Byzantine Empire, sent envoys pleading for compromise. Mehmed replied with silence. Rumeli Hisari was finished in just 4 months, an astonishing feat. Its towering stone walls, massive cannons, and strategic location sent a clear message to Constantinople. The time of mercy was over. But it wasn't just fortresses that Mehmed was building. He revolutionized the Ottoman military. He brought in engineers from Europe to cast the largest bombard cannons the world had ever seen. One of them, built by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, was so massive that it required a team of 60 oxen to move. The gun could fire stone balls over 600 pounds, enough to shatter even Constantinople's legendary Theodosian Walls, which had stood unbroken for nearly 1,000 years. At the same time, Mehmed amassed an army of staggering size. Estimates ranged from 80,000 to 200,000 men. It was a multi-ethnic force: Turks, Anatolians, Janissaries, Balkan levies, and artillery crews, unified by one goal: to breach the last standing symbol of Rome. The Byzantine defenders, by contrast, numbered perhaps 7,000, including 2,000 foreign mercenaries. Their greatest hope lay in Giovanni Giustiniani, a Genoese commander with experience in siege warfare. Yet even he could only delay the inevitable. In the spring of 1453, Mehmed made his move. His army advanced on Constantinople from both land and sea. Naval ships blocked the Golden Horn while artillery was stationed around the city. Then came a sound the Byzantines had never heard before: the thunder of cannon fire. Day after day, week after week, the earth shook. The walls cracked. The city shook. Inside, panic spread. Churches were filled with people praying, weeping, begging for divine intervention, but there was no help coming from the west. Despite Constantine Vivetina's pleas to European powers, the response had been lukewarm. The papacy sent a few ships. Venice and Genoa were hesitant. Caught between fear of Mehmed and indifference to Constantinople's fate, Christendom had turned its back. But the Byzantines did not surrender. Mehmed II faced frustration. The walls held longer than expected. His forces suffered heavy losses. When the Ottoman fleet failed to penetrate the Golden Horn, thanks to a massive chain the Byzantines had drawn across its mouth, Mehmed did the unthinkable. He ordered ships to be dragged over land through greased logs to bypass the blockade. In one night, the Ottomans transported dozens of ships over hills and valleys, launching them into the protected harbor behind the city. It was a stroke of genius, and it broke the spirit of many inside Constantinople. By late May, the walls were splintered, the city was starving, and the defenders were exhausted. But Constantine refused to abandon his people. He discarded his imperial regalia, donned the armor of a soldier, and prepared to die with sword in hand. On May 29th, after 53 days of siege, Mehmed ordered the final assault. This was not merely a military climax. It was the culmination of centuries. The last heir of Rome stood against the rising force of a new empire, and at that moment, the fate of the ancient world hung in the balance. The fall of Constantinople was no longer a question of if, but when. Imagine standing on the walls of Constantinople that final night. What would be your last words to the empire? This was the turning point. From here, there would be no return. For the Byzantines, for Christendom, or for the world. It was not just a city that stood at the gates. It was the soul of an empire. As the noose tightened around Constantinople, the Byzantine court made one final, desperate attempt to save what remained of the 1,000-year-old empire. They looked westward, hoping that Christian solidarity would overcome centuries of mistrust. But hope was a cruel mistress. In 1452, Emperor Constantine XI sent envoys to the Catholic West, begging for aid, not just military, but moral. He offered what few emperors before him dared: union with the Roman Church. In Hagia Sophia, once the spiritual heart of Eastern Orthodoxy, a Latin Mass was performed, a gesture meant to show the West that the Byzantines were ready to set aside the Great Schism of 1054 in exchange for salvation. But this union was seen by many Orthodox citizens not as a diplomatic triumph, but as heresy. The deeply religious people of Constantinople were horrified. They had endured famine, siege, and humiliation, but now they were being asked to forsake their faith. As the city's last days approached, the empire was not united in defiance, but fractured by internal spiritual warfare. Priests clashed in the streets. Monks fled from churches where Latin prayers echoed. Some citizens began to believe that divine punishment was inevitable, that the city would fall because they had betrayed the true faith. As one chronicler bitterly recorded, "Better the turban of the Turk than the tiara of the Pope." This wasn't just religious rhetoric. It reflected a deep existential fatigue. After centuries of betrayal and neglect from Western Christendom, from the looting of the Fourth Crusade in 1204 to the cold shoulders of European kings in the 15th century, the Byzantines felt abandoned,